Hey friends, welcome to the Raising Boys and Girls podcast. I'm Sissy Goff.
And I'm David Thomas.
And I'm Melissa Trevathan.
And we're so glad you joined us for this conversation. Let's dive in.
Okay, David. We've moved into the social milestones, which I'm really excited to talk about. And
Me too.
I think we would both say, I feel like we've said this with every milestone, but in this day and time, it feels more important than ever to talk about awareness. With the world where it is, with screens where they are, just seems really important to lean into every one of these social milestones. And we've got two girls struggling with awareness right now in our midst.
Oh my goodness. I could do a whole episode on June's hurdles around awareness. That's a podcast episode unto itself, but we're working on awareness in all moments at our household right now. And parents listening, you may feel like that too. So we're right there with you.
Okay, can I tell my favorite Henry story about awareness?
Please.
As we're starting, because we're going to start off with talking about stumbling blocks, as we do with these milestones, and thinking about awareness. I think you would say boys inherently are going to struggle with this one more than girls.
Yes.
And I would say girls to a certain age, which we're going to talk more about on social media. But early on, girls are very attuned to awareness because awareness is foundational to relationships, and relationships are foundational to girls building their own sense of identity. Right, June? So we got to work on your awareness. So my favorite Henry story, his first year of school, so I think he was 3, he came home talking every day about his friends Nate and Lucy. And towards the end of the school year, Kathleen said, Henry, have you made any other friends besides Nate and Lucy? And he said no. And it wasn't until she went to school and met his friends that she realized he introduced several boys to her as Nate and several girls as Lucy. He thought every girl in the class was named Lucy and every boy was named Nate. But he loved Nate and Lucy.
He was covering all his bases all the time.
All his bases.
That's a great strategy.
Yes.
I love that story so much.
So do you want to start with talking about where the fell is in our lives?
I will. And, it's interesting as I have been laughing about June's struggles with awareness. I talk a lot about how her primary relational strategy is what I call desperate bids. Like she just throws herself at people all the time when they're not necessarily wanting that attention or that lunging. And that's a struggle for a lot of toddler age boys on the front side. I talk about how they so often will stand too close, talk too loud. They're not aware of space, volume, proximity, tone, all those things. And interestingly enough, I think they gain some of those skills in the elementary years and then lose them again in the middle school years. Like if you've been in close contact with a middle school age boy, you've seen evidence of that as where it's like he had access to some of that awareness and lost some of it. So if you are a parent of a boy in that space, I don't want you to feel discouraged because you're going to start to see some of that return in a really great way, but it will be dormant for a period of time while there's a lot of growth happening. And so as we're supporting boys in the development, one of the things that I want to talk about that I think is a stumbling block for a lot of boys of a lot of ages is reading nonverbal cues. And we're told that 70 to 80% of all communication is nonverbal. So boys have got to be able to read what someone's communicating with their eyes, with their face, with their arms crossed, all the different ways that we send signals through our bodies. And one of the primary concerns I have about technology right now is how much time boys are spending on video games with a headset on, not having the opportunity to read faces and missing opportunity in a space that they already have some deficit. So it's where he's got to have a lot of practice in real life exchanges in order to catch that 70 to 80%. And it's interesting because I put this data in the book, which I think is fun to look back at and read. So many studies have identified that females have advanced abilities to use and read nonverbal communication. Deborah Tannen wrote a book called You Just Don't Understand, and she labels the differences in communication styles of females and males as rapport talk and report talk. According to Tannen, females use conversation to increase connection. maintain intimacy and develop rapport. Doesn't that fit so well with so much of what you say about girls as relational creatures? Males, on the other hand, talk to deliver data, build status, and establish independence. Women tend to stand in closer proximity to one another, gesture frequently, and maintain eye contact. Men typically keep greater distance past toddlerhood, gesture less, and avoid eye contact.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
That's fascinating.
I know. And I put in additional studies as well, but that's but one that's going to identify some of these differences. And when we talk about awareness, I really want to challenge you to be thinking about helping kids develop awareness of self and awareness of others. And one of the things that we talk about in the book that's worth mentioning again is that when we were ordering the milestones, when we were thinking about which ones do we want to come in what order, we purposefully put the emotional milestones before the social milestones. And that's not just because E comes before S alphabetically, but it's because we really have seen strong evidence that if kids aren't developing those foundational milestones we've been talking about of empathy, for example, it's going to really get in the way of their relationship. Yeah. So I've seen countless boys who, for example, struggle so much with perspective and resourcefulness that they have a lot of difficulty in friendships because they just go off the deep end. Mm-hmm. And I had a family I consulted with a couple of weeks ago, and the mom said, we've noticed that our son is not getting invited to be on teams because he loses it when they're losing. And that's just not fun to be on a team with him, because he just blows the stack so easily. So we really do want to challenge you, go back and listen to the 4 emotional milestones as you think about helping your kids develop socially, because sometimes their hurdles in relationships may be more rooted in the emotional muscles being weaker, in addition to some struggles with developing the social muscles. What would you say about girls and stumbling blocks? I can't count how many parents come up to us that are pregnant with their 3rd or 4th child at speaking events. They are heroic for wanting to learn and grow.
I wish we could give them free babysitting, a spa day, or a nap. But what we can do is tell them about our sponsor, Needed. Help them feel more energy, mental clarity, and resilient through products we've come to know and love from our friends at Needed.
Meeting with moms every day in our work, I'm reminded that the mental load on women is heavy, from stress to caregiving, multitasking, technology use, and the unique demands of everyday life.
A Needed survey found 90% of breastfeeding women expressed difficulty concentrating, 87% said they felt forgetful, and 83% expressed brain difficulty with mental clarity, brain fog.
I bet 100% said they need to take a nap. Back to breastfeeding, many nutritional supplements are not appropriate for women breastfeeding despite the immense need for support postpartum.
There are a lot of options out there, but Needed is a brand we trust for nutrition products that support all stages of parenthood, from preconception to postpartum support and beyond.
They're backed by over 4,000 nutrition and health experts, including OBGYNs, midwives, and dietitians, and the brand really understands the unique needs of parents.
I love Needed's cognitive and stress support. I've noticed better focus, attention, mental clarity, concentration, better ability to cope with stress, better energy since I started taking it. Needed's cognitive support is designed to help improve key aspects of cognitive health to help you feel like you again. It is expertly designed by women for women.
And they even have products specifically designed for dads too. I love their Men's Multi, which supports everything from libido and sperm health to brain function and hair coverage.
If you're looking for products that can optimally support your brain health, mood, energy, mental clarity, and replenish your nutrient stores after having 1 or more kids, check out Needed's comprehensive line of nutritional products.
Head over to thisisneeded.com and use code RBG for 20% off your first order. That's THISISNEEDED.com and use code RBG for 20% off your first order.
David, are you looking for something simple and delicious to add to your wellness routine?
I have been craving something simple and delicious, but I don't think it will add to my wellness routine. It's homemade cinnamon rolls.
That will add more work to your wellness routine. David, I used to put regular honey into a lot of foods, breakfast, tea, protein shakes, salad dressings, etc. But Monocora puts all other honey to shame.
What do you love about Monocora honey? Its richness, creaminess, complexity of flavor, health benefits, etc. In other words, why did you make the switch from regular honey or other sweeteners?
I like it in my tea.
I like it in my coffee with cinnamon.
I used it last week when I was sick to help with my cough.
Monocora honey is rich, creamy, and the most delicious honey you've ever had. It's ethically produced by Monocora's master beekeepers in the remote forest of New Zealand.
Monocora honey contains powerful nutrients to support immunity and gut health. It's a game changer, and all you need is 1 heaped teaspoon each morning to get the most out of the amazing bioactives in Monica.
Additional usage through the day is completely fine, especially helping to cut out other sweeteners. It's a honey with superpowers.
Now it's easier than ever to try Monocora honey. Head to monocora.com/RBG to get $25 off the starter kit, which comes with an MGO 850 plus Monica honey jar, 5 honey travel sticks, a wooden spoon, and a guidebook.
That's Monocora, MANUKORA.com/RBG for $25 off your starter kit.
Well, I love that you're saying that because I do think girls are, like we said before, more adept naturally at awareness. And part of that, I remember Dad telling me the story. He said that his daughter was highly aware, highly empathetic. And he said she was standing behind me in line at a fast food restaurant and she tapped me on the shoulder. And I turned around and she said, "Dad, I'm so sorry." And he said, "Honey, what do you mean?" And she said, "That little spot where you don't have any hair on the back of your head, that's got to be really hard for you." He said, "Thanks." But
She thought she was helping him out.
I
didn't
know
she?
she did, but girls are so aware. Again, they're going to lose it, like you were saying with boys, as they move closer and closer to adolescence. I think they become highly aware of how others are treating them, but they become very unaware of how they treat others and how their behavior lands on others. But for the most part, until we get to that point, I think they're very aware. And so when girls aren't, I want us to pay attention. And in the book, I talk about different stumbling blocks, and one being something deeper going on. And I tend to think if girls are struggling relationally, really through any years of their growing up, I want us to really pay attention to why. Because relationships are going to be so foundational, not just to our identity, their identity, like we were talking about before, but also their confidence. And so I sit with a lot of parents of girls who will say things like, my daughter just is, the other girls don't play with her a lot. She's not invited over a lot. I can't really tell what's going on. And I had a hunch, maybe she had some attention hurdles. And so I asked the teacher at school and they said, absolutely not. Now, I'm going to say, in my experience as a therapist, I believe the number one impediment to a girl developing awareness socially is ADHD. That feels like a really bold statement, but in my work with girls, I think it's true. And what is really complicated is girls have more serotonin being released in their brains, so they have better impulse control. And so often girls with attention hurdles can drill it down during the day. They can focus, they do very well academically. And if you're living this, you know what I'm going to say. By the time they get out of school, the reserve is gone and the wheels have come off and they cannot maintain the impulsivity anymore. And so it's coming out everywhere. But where I start to see it is socially. And as you were talking, David, about cues, nonverbal communication, I will sit with a lot of parents who have that hunch that maybe there's more going on. And what they will start to say are things like, I don't think she knows that she's talking too loud. I don't think she knows that she's talking too long. And so she's not connecting as well with other kids. And so what happens for those girls is we do, as David was talking about, we have all these layers and levels of communication. And so the way that I can tell on your face, if I'm having a conversation with you when you start to become bored, if I have any type of attention hurdles, I can't get to that. I can't see that. Those social cues are missed by me. And so what happens is I feel like there starts to become this drift that the girls, as they get older, I feel like it's really earlier and earlier in elementary school, but as girls' relationships become more complex, then the girls who struggle with attention start to get left behind. And they're not connecting as much. All of a sudden, they're not being invited over. They can't find a group of friends. They're being included in the larger birthday parties, but not the smaller ones. And again, because the teachers are missing it, because it's not showing up at school, I think we often miss it as well. And we do these girls a real disservice, because then what starts to happen, I think, is a lot of these girls just spend time with boys, and boys become their best friends because, no offense, David, but boy communication is a lot easier. It's not nearly as complex.
Yes.
And so those layers of communication don't have to be attended to. It just doesn't matter if they're talking too loud or they're standing too close. Guys have an amazing ability to be resilient relationally, I think, where they just keep moving. And girls don't. It lingers longer. And so I start to get really concerned if we're not seeing it, because I do think those relationships, like we were talking about before, start to define their identity and then start to define their confidence, right, June? So your dad needs to speak kindly about you and how you're relating. So if you are suspecting at all that your daughter, as I'm saying this, might have some kind of attention hurdle. Now, what's complicated is anxiety and ADHD can look really similar in a lot of ways, but I think anxious girls are too in tune socially. They're too in tune to the social cues, and then they overanalyze any little response, the smallest slight from somebody else. And so we just want to be really attuned to what might be going on relationally if girls are starting to struggle. And I would say if your daughter is, if you suspect that I might be describing your daughter, I want you to mention it to your pediatrician, because they will likely recommend doing some type of screening that would help you determine whether that might be at the root of where your daughter's struggling. Because I think it's not even that we want to jump to medication, although I do think at times medication is really helpful for kids. Again, I would say my recommendation with girls is not just based on academics, because I just know a lot of girls who perform really well academically and have ADHD. But my recommendation is more when it is significant enough that it's really impacting her socially. And so she is kind of in a free fall with friends, because I think friends are crucial for girls. And so I think that's when we want to think about it. And so I want you to talk to your pediatrician, get an evaluation, see how significant it is. And I want us to shore her up in some ways socially where she can have a lot more practice. And actually, I'm going to come back to that in the building blocks. So why don't you jump in with building blocks for the fellas in our lives?
Well, you've set the stage beautifully for it in the story you just told. And I want to simply build on Sissy's wisdom in saying the statistics around ADHD and boys are really high. And we know that if there is, let me say it again, we know there's a strong genetic component. So if there's a history within your family, that's so important to pay attention to. And I talk a lot about with boys what I call the 3 M's when ADHD's in the mix. And the 3 M's are movement, modifications, and medication if needed. And we always want to start with how could we dial up movement so that we can channel that extra energy and creativity and sometimes intensity in great ways. And then there are a range of modifications that we can explore. You know, everything from group counseling can be really beneficial to ADHD coaching, to sometimes neurofeedback, to modifications in a classroom, to using more visual cues at home. There are so many different ways that we can offer support to kids. But I think so many parents hear ADHD and they immediately jump to medication. And sometimes that's needed, and we've seen it be highly beneficial. But there are a lot of great things in our arsenal that we can exhaust to see, is this enough
Way
support?
before that, yes.
But what Sissy and I want you to hear us say with a lot of certainty is that if we don't offer some degree of support, we're simply going to see greater and greater lags over the course of kids' development. And she and I have had a lot of conversations lately about the number of consultations we have done with parents where the dad had ADHD that was untreated. And I hear declarations like this all the time. Well, I figured it out and my son can too. And if that's your mindset, you probably don't want to sit in my office, because I'm going to push back real hard on you in that space, because we just know too much. We know too much. And we have so much great support that we can offer kids. And what I would say has been a consistent experience for Sissy and I with those dads who have untreated ADHD is, this happened to me last week twice, 2 different times. These men interrupted me. They corrected me. They were highly disrespectful to me. At one point, the wife was crying and said, you need to apologize. Like, you're not even letting him answer a question because you keep talking over him. And it was happening repeatedly. And I don't think that was this dad's heart. I think he was swimming in a lot of fear about his son carrying the same diagnosis, and it triggered a lot of his own story. And I kept trying to speak with a lot of hope to that situation, but it was difficult to get a word in because he was talking over me the majority of the conversation. And what was happening that he was missing is this building block I want to talk about. And that was, I observed his wife 2 different times trying to give him cues to let him know that it was happening and that he was way louder than he needed to be and really disrespectful. Now, here's the thing. I have spent 30 years working with teenage boys. So disrespect is like white noise to me. Like, you really can be disrespectful to me and it doesn't ruffle me whatsoever. I've been in the room with a lot of it. So it's not disruptive, but it's heartbreaking for me to think about that it doesn't have to be that way for kids, for adolescents, for adults, because we can layer in some really great support. So one of the ways we can do that is with cues. And can I borrow this book real quick?
Yeah, I might have got it.
Don't you worry. So I grew up with a mom who was the queen of cues. My mother was giving visual cues on the regular, and it makes me laugh to think about now that I'm a grown-up and how much it benefited me. It annoyed me at the time, but it benefited me greatly. So I'm going to read this section because I love it so much. It says, when I was growing up, my wise mother used cues all the time. She had a practice of saying nothing but simply touching a different part of her body. She'd touch her lips if I was chewing with my mouth open. She'd touch her elbow if mine were draped across the dinner table. She'd touch her foot if I'd accidentally put my feet on someone's furniture. She'd touch her ear if I was talking too loud or too much. She'd pinch her nose if I'd forgotten to put on deodorant, which happened on occasion in my 15th year of life often. She'd touch her zipper if my fly was open, and she'd motion like a zipper across her mouth if I was turning a conversation into an argument. Now that I think about it, my poor mother spent a lot of my growing up having to touch body parts in an effort to strengthen my awareness. But I am so incredibly grateful that she did, because I can't tell you how mindful I am in a lot of different moments having grown up with those cues with consistency, and how I have embodied that practice with my own kids at different points, because it gives us an opportunity to help kids course correct without constantly redirecting and reprimanding and why aren't you paying attention to this kind of coming along behind them. So I think visual cues are so useful. And I think in particular for boys, because I talk about how boys are primarily visual, spatial, and experiential learners. And so they're not primarily auditory learners, and we spend way too much time talking at them and not a lot of that landing on them.
I love that.
So cues would be my building block. What about you?
Okay, we're working on a new book.
Or at least we should be.
And we've been telling a lot of stories from our growing up.
Like when our moms would tell us to drink from the hose pipe if we got thirsty while we were outside playing.
Yes, we had lots of opportunities to build resourcefulness back in the 70s.
You know who is still helping kids build that now?
KiwiCo.
Yes, they are. KiwiCo encourages kids to be creative, bold, curious, and persistent through hands-on play and projects.
With KiwiCo, kids can discover they have what it takes to build and innovate.
As a parent, it can be hard to find creative ways to keep children engaged, challenged, and off their screens. KiwiCo does the legwork for you so you can spend quality time tackling projects together.
Henry and I just built the walking robot.
Could it take my dog for a walk?
Don't think I didn't think of that. We had a blast building together. I just ordered him the pinball machine for Christmas, and Whit is getting the magnetic car set.
You need to know that KiwiCo is launching KiwiCo clubs to engage kids on a journey of seriously fun learning. Watch your kids go from learning to build bows and arrows to engineering their own robot. KiwiCo has 5 clubs to choose from, covers science, technology, engineering, art, and math.
KiwiCo Clubs members get amazing perks like 10% off orders, free shipping in the U.S., and early access to new crates.
There's no commitment, so you can pause or cancel anytime. Tinker, create, and innovate with KiwiCo.
Get up to 50% off your first crate at kiwico.com, promo code RBG.
That's up to 50% off your first crate at kiwico.com, promo code RBG. Sissy, I just got back from the dermatologist, and let's just say he is less than pleased with my current situation.
Uh-oh. We don't need one more doctor displeased with our current state of health.
Let's just say those of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s weren't operating with all the information we have on board now about skin protection.
How many kids of the 80s use baby oil as sunscreen?
Let's not go there.
I've been looking for a skincare product that can effectively combat aging and wrinkles and help restore the appearance of youth to my skin. I've tried 10 to 15 products over the years and nothing has worked. Nor have I felt I can trust the quality of the products out there.
How often do you buy skincare products because they're labeled as clean and organic and paraben-free, only to find out there are 100 other toxic ingredients in them that are damaging to your skin and body? Why is it so hard to find skincare products that are truly USDA certified organic? Well, the search is over.
Purity Wood's mission is to provide people with the cleanest and most effective healthy aging and longevity products available. All of their products are USDA certified, organic, non-GMO, free of anything artificial, free of toxic preservatives and synthetic additives like pesticides, chemical fertilizers and dyes, parabens, and of course, it's cruelty-free and never tested on animals.
My dermatologist is jumping up and down right now. Purity Woods products leverage the wonders of a revolutionary ingredient, maple leaf extract, which also sounds like a fall Starbucks menu item. Maple leaves contain anti-inflammatory, antioxidants, and hydrating properties, which can help soothe irritated or inflamed skin while also plumping, brightening, and nourishing it.
Their age-defying Dream Cream is a game changer. It will make you look and feel like you've jumped back years in time. Its powerful formula contains revolutionary maple leaf extracts, plus over 25 unique and potent ingredients that help eliminate fine lines, wrinkles, age spots, and uneven skin tone.
It was formulated by skincare chemists at the top of their field to create a product that supports collagen and elastin production without irritation, drying of the skin, or hormone disruption.
Purity Woods is currently offering 17% off site-wide, but we have an additional 10% discount for our listeners for a total savings of 27%.
Go to puritywoods.com/RBG or enter code RBG at checkout for an additional 10% off your first order. That's puritywoods.com and enter code RBG for a total of 27% off your first order.
I want to say a building block for girls that I think you would agree for boys, David, and that is to get them off screens.
Yeah.
Because we know screens are one of the most significant blockers of awareness with kids. And there was a study that I read about, June doesn't like it, out of UCLA that showed that sixth graders who spent just 5 days, 5 days without looking at screens showed better recognition of emotions on the faces of others. 5 days, you all. And that is exactly what happens as they're staring at screens. Not only are they losing that ability to read the cues, but kids on social media, I would say in particular, girls on social media are becoming more used to the idea of audience rather than community. And we want them to be building community in these days. Empathy is crucial to community, but so is awareness. And screens in general, social media in particular, is going to significantly impact their level of awareness. And so I want you to think about doing several things, like we have talked about before. Delay every type of screen as long as you can, particularly social media. We love that Jonathan Haidt has said 16. He's recommended 16 as an age to start social media. I think that is brilliant. And we also have that idea that we talk about all the time. You've heard us say this a million times. You don't want to be the first to let them have every technological advantage. You don't want to be the last, so be the next to last. And so how can you, in that vein, delay it, thinking about the culture, the community that they're in themselves, and that we are giving them ample time to connect with other kids. They need as many opportunities as they can to be with kids in groups where they're bumping up against those social skills. I want them to be on some kind of sports team. I think kids, especially girls, as they hit adolescence, they need to be in some type of small group where they are noticing. In our small groups at Daystar, not only are they really supportive for the kids, but they're having opportunity to practice asking questions, offering reflective listening, all those ideas that involve awareness. And so where can you help your kids experience that? And if we were going to go really practical, which, David, I'd love for you to give one more practical idea. I'll go first while we're letting the puppies have playtime. One more practical idea I would say is I want you to role play with them as they're getting involved, as their relationships are becoming more complex. Little ones driving to a birthday party, older ones, she doesn't know how to ask a boy to a dance, whatever it is, that we're practicing with them as often as we can. And in that, I think using really practical strategies. If you have a daughter who has ADHD and is struggling with some reading of social cues, I want you to do things like have a hula hoop to show her how close she actually can stand to someone when she's talking. And I don't think it has to be a demeaning thing. I think it can be just like we have talked about a million times now in this series, that we're talking about these like muscles. And hey, this is a muscle I need to build up. And knowing that you have ADHD, there are some places we're going to lean in academically, and there's going to be some places we're going to lean in socially. And I don't think it has to be a demeaning thing. I think it can be similar to what we've been talking about all along in this series. How do we strengthen different muscles? And with kids with ADHD, we can say, hey, we're going to work a little harder in certain areas of your academic life, and we're going to work harder in areas of your social life. And sometimes because your brain's working so fast, it's going to miss certain things in communication with other people. And so let's practice. I want you to tell me, when we go to your grandmother's house and we leave, I want you to tell me 5 things you noticed about her besides the word she used. Or I want you to pay attention to how close she stood and how close you stood. There's so many different games we could even use as we're talking about that, ways that we can make it fun. But we want to practice as much as we can. And to David's great point about cues, if you're driving your kids home from school and you notice that your daughter is talking too long, have a cue that you step in with that reminds her, okay, maybe it's time to stop and ask the other child a question, which is what we're going to be talking about in the next milestone. We'll be talking a lot about this wonderful milestone of reciprocity. David, you want to give one more practical idea, and I'll run dog duty for a minute? Y'all, thank you for your awareness and graciousness with us.
So I would say, and this is a fun practice that helps boys develop awareness, and that's joke telling. I can't tell you how many boys I have seen over the years who wanted to begin our session by telling me a joke they had learned. And I love it. I'm here for it always. And there is something really beneficial about you practicing joke telling as a family so that boys learn to read an audience, so that they learn to get down timing, so that even the nonverbal piece they can pay attention to. Is that person laughing, or do they seem somewhat disinterested in what I'm telling? Have I talked too long? And so all of that shared to say there's some great, clean comedians out there that you all can enjoy. Dustin Nickerson is so fun and has great content. Nate Bargatze has fantastic content. Leanne Morgan, we love too. Some great ones that you all could watch some comedy together, practice the joke telling back and forth, reading the audience, getting the timing down. So get a joke book. That's a great way to get some practice in this space as well. So As you are test driving these ideas, we would want to remind you again with the social milestones, as we did with the emotional, that every kid is going to move at their own individual pace. And we want to honor their pace, and knowing that if something like ADHD is in the mix, there are going to be some automatic lags in their emotional and social development, and we want to give space for that.
Y'all,
And
we promised the
This is the reason we can't get a podcast episode recorded easily right here.
For those of you who are on YouTube, you get to see them both. And y'all, thank you. We promise the puppy phase won't last forever.
Mm-mm. Say it again out loud, Sissy. Remind me the puppy face won't last forever.
It will not. But aren't they cute? We're so grateful. We'll keep building their muscles of awareness as we go. We're in it with you guys.
Bye.
Grateful for you. David, what a team we have that we get to call friends who help make this podcast possible.
Amanda Young, our operations manager.
Chris Starrett, our engineer.
Our management team at H Squared.
And we are thrilled to be a part of the That Sounds Fun network.
Our music was created by the insanely talented Dave Haywood of Lady A.
And if this podcast felt helpful to you, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, all the things.
We are grateful for you and cheering you on always.